Elizabeth.
Hi, it's so wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I mean, it was just so magical when you joined the party as well, but in the front row on the stage, not just, um, joining us from, dancing on the floor. You dancing on the stage with us today.
Yes, no, I'm so excited. I have a couple stories to share. And
Yeah.
one of them that I want to actually start with, it's funny, it's an old Estonian story, and I felt guided. It was funny, I was like, when Anaya asked if I would do this, I was like, okay, universe, what story am I meant to tell? And it actually came through that I was supposed to tell two stories. And I'm kind of searching, like, what's, the first one I knew had to do, with the magic of the sun. And it's like the sacred dance that we experience every year on the solstice. And it's funny. So I found this tale, that actually hasn't really been translated very often into English. And the two translations I found were not really good in terms of like understanding, the English language. So I really felt called to kind of do my own translation. So this is an adaptation of this really ancient classic Estonian tale that I've written up. And so I'm really excited because it reminds me of what you're saying, that people haven't really celebrated solstice, in South Africa in such a long time. And this is a tale that hasn't really been told in quite some time. So I feel like that's kind of also the energy of today, is bringing the ancient, kind of back, into full power and into full visibility, as it were. So is it okay if I tell the first story?
Please go ahead. The stage is yours.
Okay, beautiful. So today I'm sharing, it's a romantic solstice story, and this is a translation I put together. I'm going to butcher the name of so this is a traditional Estonian folk tale, but it was recorded by a man. His name was Frederick Robert Falman, and the story in Estonian is called Koit ja Hamarik, but it translates into dawn and dusk. So this is a solstice tale, and it begins like this. There is great happiness when the days are long and the nights are short. In Estonia, the people call the sun the old man in the sky, or sometimes the grandfather. The grandfather has two faithful servants who have been given the gift of eternal youth. One is called dawn, and the other is called dusk. Every night, dusk greets the magnificent sun as it comes down from the sky, and then dusk sends it to sleep. Every morning, dawn wakes the sun and relights its beautiful orange embers before the sun sets out on another glorious trek across the sky. But this story takes place before all of that. When the sun finished its very, very first journey across the sky millennia ago, the grandfather said to dusk, "Into your hands, my daughter, I trust the setting sun. You must douse the light every night so no harm comes to anyone." The next morning, when the sun was about to start its journey, the old man in the sky said to dawn, "Your job, my son, will be to relight the sun every morning and prepare for each new day." And so it was that both of these immortal souls did as they were asked. The sun was up in the sky every day, even during the long dark of winter. But eventually, summer came, and then the sun did not sleep at all, for dusk gave the sun immediately to dawn, who ignited it to new life. This special time, when the sun does not sleep, is the time of summer solstice, when the world is filled with flowers and song, with light and joy. And it was this time that both servants of the old man in the sky looked deeply into each other's eyes for the first time.
As dusk hands it over with the sun to dawn, their hands touched in soft caress, and their lips met in the briefest of kisses. The grandfather's son, has one eye that never closes, and he noticed what had happened in the brief glimpse of night. So the next day he gathered both dawn and dusk together. The grandfather smiled at both his beloved servants and said, "Dear ones, it is my deepest wish that you will be happy together. You two should marry and henceforth work as husband and wife." Dawn and dusk answered together with one voice, "Grandfather, no, do not spoil our joy. Let us be young and in love, as bride and groom forever, so our love will stay fresh and young." The old man smiled at them both and blessed their decision, and then agreed to let them continue as they wanted. Ever since then, there is a special time in the year, 4 short weeks, when dawn meets dusk under the dying light of day. This is the time of summer solstice. Dusk sets the dimming sun into the hands of her beloved dawn. Their hands meet with a soft kiss, and their lips meet in a sweet kiss. Dusk's cheeks are red, and the sky reflects her joy. The old man in the sky fills the world with beautiful flowers and the sweetest sounds, as dusk rests her head on her lover's chest a tad too long. They are happy to meet in these brief but blissful moments, though eventually they separate so they can meet again next year. So the story goes of these 2 eternal lovers, dawn and dusk, who meet for a short time every summer, only to be parted again. But the beauty is in the coming together. The beauty is in the return. The beauty is in the solstice.
Wow.
So yes, I really wanted to share that because I feel like so many stories, they don't have that beautiful simplicity.
Yes.
I really felt, just this love affair of dawn and dusk. We see that every day when we go outside and we see the sun rising and falling with each fresh morning. So I really felt, that way when we look to the sky, I feel like see it with different eyes, knowing that this tale exists.
What you described, Elizabeth, is exactly like what my husband and I love doing, especially when we go out into these remote parts of the world. I think Ilse is there right now. It's this magical space, when you just look up at the sun, you look up at the moon, you actually feel like you in a space that it's so romantic, but yet you just with nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that.
I'm not sure. I think my computer might be slightly overheated. It's very excited by all the events of today. It's like there's solstice energy. I know. It's like there's winter solstice, summer solstice. So it's very excited by all the solstice.
Exactly. I mean, come on. We're bringing in all the energies we actually called in everything that's out there, right? And we said, come on, show up right now because we're doing this today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I had actually another story to share. I'm sorry if my computer is making that weird sound. If it is,
that's fine. I guess that's what the computers do at times. Because I was just wondering whether it was something you were hearing from my side or was it your side. Just making sure.
No, I think that I'm going to close out everything else. I feel like I'm being guided to do that. Okay, so softer.
There we go.
Yeah, sometimes my computer gets finicky. But I feel like that's one of the, I've seen, I know today we've had so many beautiful speakers and I know there's been some technical difficulties, but I feel like the energy prevails, we're still here making it work. So the second story I wanted to tell is actually, I think it's probably well known by Western audiences, but maybe not as much by people in South Africa. And that's actually the story of Hades and Persephone. So it's, a Greek myth. And so Persephone is actually the daughter of Demeter, who is the Greek goddess of agriculture, fertility. She's a grain goddess. And, Hades is the god of the underworld. Persephone, like I said, is Demeter's daughter, and she originally in the story begins as the goddess of spring. So if you don't know that much about Greek mythology, just like we have the regular earth, and there's like this beautiful place in the clouds called Mount Olympus where all the gods gather, and then there's the underworld down beneath the earth where souls go, when they die, and Hades is, the leader of the underworld, but he's actually a kind of a good guy. It's funny because we think of usually someone being in the underworld as being bad, but he's actually he's very stern. He does his job, and but he doesn't really like to leave the underworld very often, until one day when he happens to see Persephone. So it's funny. So he sees Persephone and immediately is like struck, by this unconditional, fantastic love for her. And he's like, I need to be with this woman. But of course, he knows that Demeter, her mother, is never going to give her away. So he goes to Zeus, the king of the gods. He gets Zeus's permission. And then the next part of the story I don't like that much. But basically what happens is, Hades arranges, a way to kind of abduct Persephone and take her into the underworld. So, one day Demeter, goes off on sacred agricultural, kind of special business, and Persephone is left in the care of these beautiful sea nymphs. And the sea nymphs kind of for a second, they stop watching her, and Persephone walks into this beautiful garden that almost appears out of nowhere. And she sees this white flower, it's called the narcissus flower. And she is so drawn by the beauty of this flower that she goes, and she bends down to pick it up and to smell, how beautiful it is. And then as she leans down to smell the flower, the earth opens up beneath her, this giant chasm, and she screams, and Hades, comes out, of the depths of the earth and pulls her down with him into the underworld. So at first it's kind of a mystery, what happened to her. So, Persephone, it's at first, she's been abducted, taken into the underworld against her will, but Hades, really does love Persephone, and he treats her with a lot of compassion and respect. He creates a garden for her down in the underworld, and Persephone, even though at first she doesn't want to be there, she eventually comes to see a side of Hades that no one else has ever really seen before. And she starts to fall in love with him. In the meantime, Demeter, her mother, is suddenly like, oh my God, where is my daughter? What's happened? So she goes all around the whole earth searching and searching. And because she's the goddess of agriculture, the crops are drying up. Everything, people are starting to experience famine because the goddess of agriculture and fertility is in such great shock and such great pain. So finally, Zeus realizes that this can't go on because everyone above the earth is suffering. So eventually he understands, okay, I've got to go. I've got to bring Persephone back to her mother. Otherwise, the earth won't have any life anymore, because so great was Demeter's love for her daughter. And so basically Persephone is going to come back, to the regular world. But as she's leaving, Hades gives her one final gift. And this final gift is actually, depending on what story, it's 1 pomegranate seed or 6 pomegranate seeds. And it's funny because there's a little bit of, controversy about the pomegranate seeds, because by eating these pomegranate seeds, Persephone seals her fate that she must remain in the underworld. Because there's this kind of belief in Greek mythology that if you eat the fruit of the underworld, you are bound there forever. And, Persephone being the goddess of spring, she knew all about seeds. So I really do believe that she knew what she was doing when she accepted Hades' gift and ate this seed of the pomegranate. So when Persephone goes back up, she's given the choice, who do you want to be with? And she says she wants to be with Hades in the underworld, but Demeter still can't bear to part with her. So it's funny. So this is actually the legend that began, the seasons the way we know them today, because there is a compromise that week. So Persephone spends half of the year with Demeter, up on Earth, and that's when we have spring and summer, when everything is vibrant and flowering, and the Earth is full of joy and wonder. But then the other part of the year, when it's cold and there's snow, is winter, when Persephone is with Hades. So I love that whenever you look outside, if it's cold, you just know that Hades and Persephone are together sharing their love. So even though the story kind of starts out in such a way that it's a little bit, he abducts her, they really do have like a very real love that forms over time. So that's the original Greek myth. And again, it's like the whole idea of how we have the seasons that we do today. But I actually thought it was funny. Once I got invited to do this and I wasn't sure what story to tell, suddenly everyone in my life started talking about Persephone. I had people just like, they started talking about, there was a video game named Hades, and I wasn't even mentioning. It was just like, okay, I guess this goddess wants to be brought into this space. Yeah. And so it's funny. So there's actually a modern, it's actually a video game called Hades, where Persephone and Hades have a son, and his parents are separated. Persephone is above, in the earth, and Hades in the underworld. And the whole point of the game is bringing them back together. And that really, stood out to me because, when I was asked to speak here today, I kind of wondered what message was I supposed to bring through, and the message was togetherness. So both stories that I wanted to tell, be it the dawn and dusk coming together, for these 4 weeks every year, and especially this one night that is the summer solstice, it's that coming together. And here we are in this moment, we've come together across different continents, across different traditions, across different nationalities. We have come together. And I feel like, again, that's also the point of solstice. It's a celebration. So I really feel like that's, if I was going to say the point of today, yes, it's a day where there's a lot of power for manifestation and sacred potency, to create. But it really is about us honoring our sacred connections with one another.
That's powerful, Elizabeth, because today is, and I'm just connecting with what you just said. It's about us honoring our sacred connections with each other. Mm-hmm. It's beyond, some people may think we're coming together for business, for whatever. This is beyond that.
Yes, absolutely.
This is beyond that. This is our sacred connection. We can be in different parts of the world, but our life finds each other, right?
Yes, no, absolutely. Because we're meant to come together. This is the moment where we have to stand together. And that's the reason I feel like so many people are being called and they're leaving. I feel like it's like when we spoke about Persephone, it's her journey. I feel like there's a great, transformation that all of us are going on, because Persephone, has to go into the underworld to really become queen and step into her power. So I feel like, especially with all the things that have happened over the last 2 years, with COVID-19, with all of these things, we have, as we've been rising, we've had to descend into the underworld and emerge even stronger. And now that we are emerging with such great power, we must stand together. I feel like really to light up the world. And I think that's part of what you've been saying. When South Africa lights up, and so does the world. And that's why we've gone on these kind of underworld initiations, because there's so much beauty here. There's so much beauty when we come together. And the world, I feel like for all of the hard things that we see, every day, I don't believe that has to be the truth. I really believe the truth is moments like this, where we come together in love.
Yeah. I'm just sitting here and I'm receiving, right? Because like you correctly said, and I guess it's so important for all of us to understand this, that when we step into our power, the shadows are going to come in whatever form. They come in the form of people, things, experiences, right? To kind of make us question, what is it, this coming together, for example? Did we listen correctly? Is this the right thing to be doing now? And this is confirmation today, that when the shadows come up, it's not there to hold us back, but it's just there to be removed and for us to step forward and understand that our connection to our truth is more important than anything else. You know?
Yes. No, I love the way you said that. It's like when the shadows come up, it's just important to stand in our truth. And I also think that, sorry, I'm kind of riffing off the story, but I really feel like it's amazing that the story of Persephone and Hades is the marriage of light and dark. So
Yes.
it's like that marriage within us too, of light and dark, the marriage of the shadow. So, and that's why it's also so powerful because, today is such a sacred day because, yes, here in this moment, in South Africa, we're celebrating summer solstice, but because it's also winter solstice, it's again, like the earth is the sacred marriage, even today, of light and dark. So it's like you can't have one without the other. So again, it's how deeply interconnected we all are.
Precisely, and that's just it. That's the magic of life. And we can't exist with just one side of us. We are both sides. We are our shadows and we are our lights. And until we embrace both sides of us, then we are not whole. That's why we keep searching. We keep searching and searching and looking for that treasure, like Michaela said, that's outside of us.
Mhm.
When that treasure is that acceptance of who we really are. We have both sides at all times.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really feel like the shadow, like a lot of our power can be found in that shadow.
Yes.
And so my invitation for people who are listening, I find that different stories really activate my power. So I think my invitation, like, for anyone listening, this is a story of, Persephone having, a power activation through the descent into the underworld. But I'm wondering for you listening, what powerful story can you draw inspiration from? What story can you find yourself in that's going to help you in 2022? Because I think that's the thing is these stories have sacred medicine for us. When we take that medicine, it's like a blueprint for us to create our destiny, for us to live our best lives and to shine our light, which is really what we're here to do.
Wow, love that. Absolutely love that. Elizabeth, find our medicine in those stories. I so agree with you. And to our viewers, let us know which story do you find you where's your medicine and where have you found and which story have you found your medicine? I'm sure Elizabeth would love to know that as well. So
I would.
Elizabeth, yeah, absolutely. Are you complete for now?
I think I'm complete. Again, I want to apologize for any like that kind of distortion. But I've loved being here, Mona. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. I mean, technical issues are just part of the whole coming together. We accept each other with whatever, however you are, whoever you are, whatever you come with, and that's the beauty of connection. You know. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Elizabeth. We'll see you in a while. I think Elizabeth's here now. I'll let her in. Thanks. So I'm going to hand over to you now. Who wants to go first? Final words for Summer Solstice 2021 in Africa. Elizabeth, Michaela.
I'll go next. Yeah, I just wanted to say at the end, I think was kind of coming through as I say goodbye. It's funny, we were talking about the colors we felt called to wear today, and I just knew I had to wear red, and I didn't know why. And as I was sitting here, I realized that my story with Persephone, there's the pomegranate, which is red. So, I feel like on this very special day where manifestation is given extra potency, I'd like, all of you, if you're open, just close your eyes for a minute and just, I'd like you to imagine a pomegranate seed in your hand. And into this pomegranate seed, I want you to cast your wish. And this is your wish for 2024. And now I want to call in the goddess Persephone and really have her bless this sacred wish of yours. And now I'd like you to take that sacred wish, that blessed pomegranate seed, and bring it to your heart. And just know that next year is blessed.